Hi, I'm Lynn Matava, the Country Tart Wellness and Nutrition Coach. Welcome to Living Healthy on the Go. We are making some really fun side dishes to go along with our Thanksgiving meal that are delicious, nutritious, and they don't break the calorie bank. We're starting out with some Brussels sprouts. I know they might sound like something that might not sound like good eats. Don't worry, we are going to make them fun. Next we have acorn squash wedges that we will be topping with a boozy caramel brittle with fleur de sel. And lastly, we have some mashed potatoes, and we won't forget dessert. Stay tuned, Living Healthy on the Go, coming up next on Pack 14. Welcome. I first would like to start off today by showing you one of my favorite vegetables. And what this has to do with Thanksgiving dinner is simple. Most people believe that they don't like Brussels sprouts. At least a lot of people that I talk to tell me they don't like Brussels sprouts. But I love to roast them, and I roast them for people, and out of all the people that have told me throughout the years they don't like Brussels sprouts, I bet only 10% still don't like Brussels sprouts after they try them this way. So try them, you're going to love them. So they grow on this giant stalk, and they come like this. You can get them at the store already pulled off the stalk. It's a lot more cost efficient this way, and this is enough to really feed a crowd. So when we're preparing a meal for the holidays, we want to make sure we have enough food for a crowd, and that's what we have here. So we're going to start by taking these Brussels sprouts off, and they look just like the little mini cabbages that you see normally. And we're just going to cut all of them off. I've pre-washed this stalk. I am making sure to point the knife blade always away from my fingers, and I keep my fingers up high while I'm doing this because knife safety is one of the most important things in the kitchen. I also make sure all of my knives are sharp, and I prefer to use heavy-duty knives that have a heavy-duty handle to them because it's just one less reason to have error in the kitchen. I use the weight of the knife to help force through things when I'm cutting instead of chopping and worrying about losing precious digits. So I've got these all off the stalk now, and what I'm doing is cutting them in half. If it's a larger sprout, I might cut it again into quarters, and I'm throwing them just into a roasting pan. So the next thing we're going to do here is take a little bit of olive oil and just drizzle this over top of the cauliflower. Now, olive oil, this is extra virgin, and I really try to get my olive oil from a single source. So when I look at the back of the bottle, it says on it that it came from just one single country. This is a product of Spain. I don't care whether my olive oil comes from Spain or Turkey or Portugal or Italy. I just want to make sure it all came from one country, as opposed to some of the bottles will say they came from all over the place, and it always isn't necessarily an authentic food product then. There's a lot of imposters out there. A way to tell that your olive oil is authentic is to put a little dab of it on your finger and put your finger on your tongue, and if you get a peppery burn in the back of your throat, it's a pretty good sign that you've got some good olive oil. So we've just put a little bit on these Brussels sprouts, and then I'm going to put a little bit of pepper and a little bit of salt. I'm just using a little kosher salt here. Kosher salt is actually lower in sodium than your regular iodized table salt. And I'm just going to toss this around. I actually am going to add a little bit more olive oil because it feels pretty dry in there to me. Again, it's a heart-healthy olive oil, and this is the holidays, so we do have to have a little bit of decadence going on. We're eating Brussels sprouts on Thanksgiving, for goodness sake. A little bit more sea salt. And then just going to put this in a 375-degree oven for about 25 to 35 minutes. It really depends on how you like them done, but we want them to cook until they're caramelized. And that means they'll be brown and a little crispy on the edges. So we're going to set these aside, and we'll come back and check them in a little bit. In the meantime, we're going to work on some acorn squash with a nice caramelized seed topping and some fleur de sel. What we have here is an acorn squash. It's a fun fall winter squash, and we're going to slice it up and roast that in the oven while our Brussels sprouts are cooking. And again, my fingers are out of the way, and I'm putting the knife in. Now this is a pretty hard squash, so I want to make sure to bear down, and that's where that heavy weighted handle comes in. And then kind of use the weight of the knife to help you break it open without getting your fingers in the way. And it opens just like that. So this is, you can see that nice orange color. It means it's full of vitamin A and carotene, and it could be served in kind of a savory or a sweet fashion. I'm using this in place of perhaps maybe some sweet potatoes with the marshmallows on top, but don't worry. This is going to be plenty good and plenty decadent and not make you feel like you're being deprived. We're going to make a little caramel brittle with fancy fleur de sel on top, so it's a salted caramel topping. And that's going to go in these nuts, these seeds that come out of the middle. And these are just like pumpkin seeds. Almost any squash you can eat the seed out of. So I'm just scooping them out of there. I don't really want the pulp stuff so much, so I'm using my fingers to kind of separate them from it. And then I'll use a knife to clean it out before I cut it up. If you've ever had pumpkin seeds or pepitas, this is the same thing. It just came out of an acorn squash. And the seeds are very high in fiber. They're very high in zinc. They have a good iron content. It's just one of those really healthy foods, a nutrient source. It's high in dense nutrients. So, you know, this is what I like to call a food that loves you back. This is going to be very tasty. It's very good for us and full of great nutrients, but it's also, you know, something that we don't mind eating, and it's just all around good for us. So we're gonna get the rest of these seeds out here. I can't even think of the amount of years I used to throw these seeds away and how much I love them now. It kind of saddens me that I used to waste these. So I'm slicing some wedges here out of this acorn squash. Again, my fingers are out of the way. I am leaving the skin on to hold it together. You are not going to eat the skin. You would scoop it out of it while you're eating it. The skin has a kind of pine flavor to it. It's not good eats. You're not going to want to eat it. And I'm just laying them down in the pan here. Again, fingers out of the way. This is such a hard flesh to cut through. I don't want to accidentally cut through some other flesh. And then just a little bit of olive oil is what I'm going to put on them. And instead of covering it and putting lots, we put a lot on the Brussels sprouts. We're going to go a little lenient. We just want to keep this from getting wet. Or getting dried out, I mean, so we're going to moisten it with the olive oil. And I'm just using this brush to brush it on. If you don't have a brush like this, you could just use your fingers. No science behind this. We're just really trying to make sure that as it cooks in the oven, it gets caramelized a little bit without getting excessively dry. So, out of the way. Bring this over here. Now, we've made room in our oven at Thanksgiving time, and we have lots of dishes in the oven that need cooking. And while we're over here, I'm going to stir those Brussels sprouts that we put in. They might need to be stirred a couple times during cooking. And now we're going to make the fun part for the topping to the acorn squash. This is the kind of caramel brittle that we're making. So I am placing those seeds in a pan, and I've got a tablespoon of butter and I've divided it. So I'm placing the first portion of that in the pan now, and I'm using real butter. I'm not using margarine. I'm not using, now of course if you're a vegan you could use something like coconut oil, but I don't really believe in general in using the artificial stuff. I think that it's full of all kinds of chemicals and things that we probably aren't meant to put in our body. Butter is natural, and we're having such a small amount of it, and this is a holiday. So we're trying to give it that nice rich flavor. And these are just going to cook. We want to toast them for probably about 3 minutes, stirring it every so often with the butter in it. These are nice and toasty now, and you can see they're all getting nice and brown, a golden brown color. I wish you could smell them. They smell so good. To this pan now, I'm adding a tablespoon of sugar, maybe a little more, and I am adding the rest of our butter. So this is the rest of our tablespoon. And this is just going to be in here long enough to melt the sugar. We don't want to burn anything. We don't want to... And it's all starting to get melted. And then I've got a tablespoon of spiced rum. You could use Southern Comfort or any kind of flavored spiced liqueur that you wanted to use. I wouldn't recommend using whiskey or bourbon because it's going to take all the sweetness out of it. We want something that's nice and caramelized. And this is just, while it's sitting here, making this nice, warm, caramelized smell. You could add, at this point, a little bit of vanilla extract if you wanted, if you had some. We already have the liquor in there, so we're good. And then I'm going to turn off the heat. And this is just going to set aside until those wedges of acorn squash are finished, and we're just going to top them with it when it comes out of the oven. So while I'm standing over here at the stove still, I just want to give our Brussels sprouts one more quick stir. They're coming along nicely in there, and the acorn squash is coming along nicely. And we've had potatoes that have been cooking on the stove. They're just boiled red skin potatoes. We peeled some of the skin off, left some of it on, and we just drained out the water to go ahead and make mashed potatoes. So we've got our potatoes over here, and I'm just going to give them a little bit of mash in the pan. There is no fat added in here, so here's what we're going to do. Normally, to mash potatoes, you think about putting a stick of butter in and then loading them up with gravy. And I might want to save some calories so that I can have dessert today, so I'm going to leave some of that off. But what I'm putting in here is Greek yogurt, and Greek yogurt is just a strained yogurt product, so it's been strained and thickened. All the whey has been drained out of it, and it's very thick like sour cream. So it's going to be kind of like having sour cream potatoes. So I'm going to mash it up and blend that in there with them. I'm going to add a little bit of sea salt or kosher salt, whatever I have, just to give it a little bit of flavor. Red potatoes tend to be a little sweeter. And I did leave the skin on, not all of them, but as I peeled them, I purposely left a little bit of the red skins on because it's pretty. And when we eat first with our eyes, if food is pretty, it's more appetizing to us, plus there is more fiber there. So there is nothing wrong with adding a little bit of fiber into our dinner here. And then I have our last little secret ingredient here that I'm adding. These are caramelized onions, and all I did was slice up onions and put them on the stove top in a little bit of olive oil and put the lid down on them and let it for a very low temperature for about 5 minutes, and they cook down and they wilt. And then take the lid off and continue stirring for another 5 minutes until they turn this nice deep brown color. The natural starches in the onions are nice and sweet, and it's just a way to layer more flavor, because that's one of the secrets of good cooking, whether you're eating healthy or you're just trying to eat good food in general, is layering flavors. And it's a great way to make it so that you don't have to mask things or eat bland foods and then cover them with salt, because what we've done is just layer in some really great flavors. And you can mash these as much as you want. I like my potatoes a little bit lumpy. They're creamy, they have some texture, they don't have to be overdone for me to enjoy them. Okay, I've got a very noisy pan here. And then I'm just going to transfer them to a dish because we obviously can't serve our Thanksgiving potatoes. Again, I wish you could smell these. It's really starting to smell like Thanksgiving dinner in here. So between the onions and the red potatoes, these have a nice depth of color to them. They're still nice and creamy. And you could have added as much of the Greek yogurt that you wanted. I just added what I wanted for my own taste, but that's what a lot of this kind of cooking is. It's to taste. So if you like a little more or a little less, you can do it your way. And then the last thing I'm going to do, because you have to put finishing touches on, and potatoes are white. They're kind of a white, boring starch. So I put a little bit of the parsley on, and I'm going to finish it with just a little bit of the heart-healthy olive oil. If somebody wants to go back at the table and add some butter to it or add some of the turkey cooking juices or something, some gravy, that's okay too. But this way we know they're flavorful as is, and they're healthy, and this is a great way to add a nice little healthy touch that's fun to your Thanksgiving dinner. No Thanksgiving meal would be complete without dessert, so what I've made here is some rice pudding. And how I've made rice pudding healthy, and this is delicious and creamy like rice pudding should be, is I've started out with a short grain, sticky Korean brown rice. And you can get this at Asian markets right here in the Tri-County area. I bought it right here in town. And it cooks up sticky anyway and has like a nice sweet flavor to it. And I cooked it with some milk and water and a little bit of maple syrup and let it cook down. And don't worry about trying to follow how I did this. I actually have the recipe, and all of these recipes, you can find them on the Country Tart blog. But I, in the interest of time today, did this before we got here. And I let it cook down, and I let all the sauces thicken, and then we added some pureed pumpkin to it. So it's a pumpkin maple rice pudding. And I'm just going to scoop it into this bowl, because you have to have pretty dishes for Thanksgiving. And you know what? You could go ahead if you wanted to and put some whipped cream on it. What I'm doing instead of whipped cream, just to go ahead with our healthy living theme, I've got some great local honey here, and I have got some more of that strained Greek yogurt. So I'm going to take some local honey that the thought is that you're getting some local pollen and it helps with allergies. Whether or not this is true, I always say when people ask me that I love supporting local business. I think it's what is really good for us all the way around. It's good food karma. It's good for our economy. And it's just good to get food that comes locally to us. So I've sweetened that up, and you could sweeten it to taste. And before I top it on there, since I had a little bit of rum that I used to make those seeds that'll go on top of our acorn squash, I took some raisins and took the liberty of soaking them in some of that rum just to make it a little bit more decadent, a little more fun and festive. So we're all about festive this time of year. And then I'm just going to give a little dab. And just like that, you've got dessert. Pulling everything out of the oven now. First I'm going to get these beautiful roasted Brussels sprouts. Look how pretty they came out. And our wedges of acorn squash. And for me, I feel like this is all such comfort food. So it's great to have that holiday time, the comfort foods that make us want to sit there and eat and loosen our belt a little. I'm going to just put a little bit of everything on the plate here. I've got a wedge, maybe two. I really like these. And then got to have some of my potatoes. I have to say, the only thing missing here at this point is the turkey. Where is that turkey? Now I'm taking those, remember the caramelized seeds we made? And this is what really makes the acorn squash special, because this is like a brittle. It's got a slight boozy flavor. It tastes like sugar and butter. And that's really what makes the whole thing special. I hope you found some inspiration here today to add a little bit of healthy in with all of the holiday decadence. I know that's my word of the day. And any of these recipes, again, can be found on the Country Tart blog. And we have all the recipes for the acorn squash, the Brussels sprouts, the mashed potatoes, and of course, let's not forget dessert. So check them out, and I hope to see you again, living healthy on the go, only on Pack 14. For more information on healthy living, go to wicomicohealth.org and livehealthywicomico.org. Find us on Facebook at facebook.com/wicomicohealth.